Hi mamas, thank you so much for choosing to be here today. Today I'm going to guide you through some simple modifications that you can practice throughout the course of your vinyasa flow or Ashtanga based yoga class. For a lot of us, we don't have access to prenatal yoga classes, or perhaps we are feeling really great in our bodies and we love a particular teacher and we want to continue going to their class while we're pregnant. These modifications are here for you that you can take with you into the classroom, or perhaps you're practicing online and you can kind of adjust your flow according to what your body needs on a moment to moment, day by day basis. So I am currently 27 weeks pregnant with my second, and this pregnancy has been very different than my first. My first one, I had a lot of energy and I practiced vinyasa-based yoga probably all the way up until month 7 of my pregnancy. And this one, I've been just kind of slowing down a little bit, doing more restorative poses and practices. So wherever you are in your pregnancy, whether this is your first, your second, your third, or your fifth, you probably know by now that every day is different and every pregnancy is different. So really honoring your body throughout the course of not only this practice, but all of your practices moving forward is the best thing that you can do for you and your baby. That being said, there are some props that I highly recommend that you have on hand. If you're practicing at a studio, they might have a lot of these props there for you to use, but if you're practicing at home, it might be worthwhile to invest in some of these products. The first one is going to be a yoga strap. It's not necessary that you own a yoga strap. You could use something that looks similar. Even a kitchen towel will do, but just something that has a little bit of pull to it so that it doesn't slip out of your hands or it doesn't stretch too far beyond kind of what it's meant to do. This is a really great strap. It's nice and thick. And if you're new to using a yoga strap, there is a tail end of the strap and then the buckle. And to make it lock into place, you just take that tail end of the strap, place it through the loop that is closest to the other tail, and then out and around like that through the outside loop. And that should lock it into place. And then you can adjust it according to what you need or what you're doing. The other props that I highly recommend are yoga blocks. So these are Manduka Cork Blocks. They're my favorite. They also have these black blocks that are really great. And the reason I really like them is because they will hold to the mat, so they'll stick to the surface beneath you, giving you a really nice grip. And they're also just a really great size so that when your hands rest on the blocks, you can kind of grip the outside of them. Or even if you don't, there's still a nice amount of friction so that your hands won't slip off the blocks. And blocks just give you a little bit of extra support. They help to lift the ground up and just make it a little bit more comfortable for you as you flow throughout your mat, especially in some of those transitions. But I'll show you that soon. If you don't have blocks, it's okay. I'll show you a lot of things that you can do without blocks. And then if you do choose to decide to invest in them, those are great as well. The next thing I recommend you have is a blanket. Any blanket will be okay, just something that you can fold a couple of times that you feel comfortable placing upon your mat, and again, that won't slip on the surface to support your knees and even your hips when you're sitting up. So a lot of times when we sit, if you find that your knees are kind of hiked up here, it's because our hip flexors are particularly tight. So you could just take a blanket or even a pillow or a bolster and continue to lift your hips up so that your knees slope downward. And when your knees slope downward, it just relaxes your hip creases, your psoas muscle, so that your spine can lengthen, right? And get a little taller. And then the last thing that I think is really helpful is a bolster. So this is a yoga bolster that we use a lot in restorative yoga, but you can also use it in your flow practices. And it's really helpful for Shavasana, even for child's pose, some of those poses where you just need a little bit of extra support. And if you don't have a yoga bolster at home, I know I didn't have any of these props for many, many years, then you can grab a pillow. Just any pillow will do. Something that's a little bit thinner, long and narrow is probably best, and perhaps won't collapse once you place your head upon it or your body upon it, something that has just a little bit of cushion. All right. So with that being said, this is not really designed to be a flow practice. This is more of an informative practice. So if you are looking for a flow practice, this is just kind of a little bit more information, and then I'll guide you to other practices that you can do later on. All right, so beginning with opening up your blanket. Your blanket is really there to support your knees for a lot of this practice, because we will be lowering down to our knees quite a bit. I know for me that my joints became rather sensitive throughout my pregnancy, so just that little extra cushion can really help. Let's say they want to start the practice in child's pose. You'll open your knees a little bit wider than your chest, releasing your toes. And if your hips do not meet your heels, this is kind of where a bolster can come in really handy. And you can place that bolster between your calves and your thighs. Sit on the bolster so your hips are a little bit lifted. And you can stay here. You can lean forward. Some of us can actually fold and rest. But if not, it's okay just to place your hands or your forearms down, palms together, maybe even thumb to your third eye. And take those few breaths to connect to your breath and to your body. And then once they've moved on, shifting forward onto your hands and to your knees, setting up for what we call Betalasana or cat and cow. So we'll be doing a lot of cat and cow throughout the course of our practice. And the reason for that is because if you practice vinyasa or Ashtanga-based yoga, you'll know that the flow is inhale, arms rise up, stepping back to plank or jumping back to chaturanga, moving into a cobra, which is not possible when you have a baby here, or up dog. And up dog is a really, really big back bend, and cobra is obviously belly based, so we don't want to do that. So lowering your knees for cat and cow can be a really nice and easy transition that you can do throughout the course of your practice. So if you're new to cat-cow, your hands will come underneath your shoulders. Spread your fingertips wide on the mat and make sure you're rooting down into your inner palm. Triceps back, biceps forward, so you broaden your collarbones. Now, because we have baby in the front of our bodies, it's really easy just to drop the belly towards the floor, which becomes a lower back bend. But what we're looking for is just a little bit of a hug. You see that? Just a little bit of the hug of the transverse abdominis, the outer muscles hugging in, to lengthen your lower back. And that'll make your lower back nice and happy throughout the course of your pregnancy. Now, as you inhale, the heart reaches forward through the gateway of the arms, and that hug of the side body muscles just helps to open the upper back, which tends to get very, very tight. And then as you exhale, press down and round your upper back. And again, you can keep the collarbones kind of relatively broad so that your neck never feels too scrunched in any direction, if that makes sense. So wrapping your triceps back, biceps forward, pulling your heart forward, hugging a little bit of that side body in, and then exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Good. So You could always do this with your blocks. I really like down dog with blocks when I'm pregnant. Nice. And if you're new to down dog, a little wider of a stance might be really nice and generous for your body at this time. Just something maybe a couple inches wider than hips within distance. Nice. So normally we step forward in a vinyasa class, and you can step forward, especially if you have those blocks, keeping your feet hips within distance, maybe lifting your blocks a little higher to lengthen your spine. And then exhale to fold. And then just bend your knees, keeping that little buoyancy in your knees. As you rise up to stand, reach your arms up. Exhale, hands to heart. So we'll go through a Surya Namaskar A, or kind of that first sun salute, stepping to the top of your mat. Inhale, arms reach up. Exhale, forward fold. Hands land on blocks, shins or thighs. Inhale, lengthen your spine. And then exhale, you'll step back to down dog. Lower your knees to the mat as you inhale. Open your chest so you find your back bend. And then exhale, round. Find a neutral spine. And then downward facing dog. And now let's say stepping forward is not comfortable, which over time it might not be. Then instead, walk your hands to the back of your mat. So you're in down dog. And as people are coming high onto their toes and stepping forward, you'll just walk your hands back. Inhale, lengthen your spine. And then exhale, kind of bend your knees a little bit. Press down to rise. Arms reach up overhead. And then exhale, hands to heart. Inhale, arms reach up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, lengthen your spine. And then exhale, walking your hands back out. Downward facing dog. Lowering your knees down. Inhale, opening your chest. Exhale, round. And then downward facing dog. Nice. So you'll find that those breathing cues kind of work in alignment with the flow, so you don't feel like you're too far behind. But even if you are, it's totally fine. Just taking the breaths that you need to transition safely and comfortably. So the next thing that's super helpful as baby starts to grow is stepping your feet outside your hands. So let's say the teacher has just said, step your right foot forward. You can always lower your knees down to the ground and then step, which creates a little bit easier of a transition for anything from warrior 1, right, to warrior 2, nice, to triangle pose. Nice. And we'll kind of go through all of those. And you'll lower your hands inside. You can also step forward from downward dog. And again, just step outside your hand. And you could find even crescent pose. Warrior 2. Yes. Triangle pose. Yes, all of those things. So I do recommend having a prop there for you. Let's say the teacher has just instructed triangle pose. Placing a block outside just helps to kind of lift the floor up a little bit so that you have a little bit more support through your side body as you press your feet down into the ground and then reach your arms up. And then same thing for side angle. hand inside, either forearm to thigh, if you don't have those blocks, or hand to the block. All right. And then always just lowering your hands down, inside. So you step back to down dog. All right, so let's say the teacher has just decided to move into back bends. So the reason why we don't practice really deep back bends during pregnancy is because back bending requires a lot of abdominal or core support. And we don't really want to be flexing our abs at this point. Our babies are growing, the home is growing. You can tone and stabilize through, holding plank, to just simple engagement of these muscles hugging in, but you don't need to be doing a lot of core work. So that being said, because the support isn't necessarily right there, it's very easy to dump into the lower back. So obviously bow pose, belly back bends where you grab the back of your feet, really, really challenging. If you have an existing practice, maybe instead of doing bow pose, you could do Sunbird Pose, which starts from, hands and knees, reaching one foot back and then the other. This is a great stabilization exercise to do throughout pregnancy. You can always catch your foot and kick back. Nice. So I'm a pretty deep back bender, and that still doesn't feel great in my body during pregnancy. It is an option, and if it feels great in your body, go for it. The back bend that feels the best for me is Camel Pose. So Camel Pose is the one where you stand up on your knees, hips over knees, and you can bring your blocks or just tuck your toes and place them outside of your feet. You'll lower one hand to the block or to your heel as you reach up, and then exhale, sweep, catch the block or your foot, and then reach up. And you just kind of move from side to side, and you get that nice heart opening, side body expanding. That should feel really, really nice. Because so often when our babies start to grow, our shoulders start to hunch. So a little bit of heart opening feels really good. Same thing, resting on your back is very personal. Some people feel really, disturbed by that, and then other people feel totally fine. So if you're into bridge pose or wheel pose or any of those poses, feel free to practice those. I don't normally instruct those in a prenatal yoga class, but I know some people who can. So just listening to your body and what feels good. But I highly recommend the camel, right? You can even lower your hands to both blocks. And just kind of breathe into that. All right. If the teacher does instruct core work and he's sort of like crunching of the abs or tiger's poses or anything like that, then you can always lower your knees down to the ground. And your best friend after cat and cow are just Sufi rolls. Just moving your chest in a circle. Opening up your hips and opening up your shoulders. So while people are doing their core exercises, you'll just be kind of moving and grooving here in those Sufi rolls. Awesome. So the other thing that we want to avoid throughout pregnancy is cross-body twisting. So what do I mean by that? Open twisting is where baby's home is nice and open. You are not constricting blood flow or oxygen to baby's home, but you're still getting a little bit of revolving across your upper body and your shoulders again, which tend to get very, very tight just with life. So a cross-body twist would be something like your arm crossing over your body and then pushing yourself off to the side. And while that feels really good when you're not pregnant, it doesn't feel very good when you are pregnant. So you can always just keep your hand open so that your chest is open and then revolve. So everything's open. It's just a little bit of a twist across your upper chest. Same thing. And that could feel really gentle and nice. If you're in a lunge, let's say you're in crescent pose, so you've just stepped your foot forward. You're balancing on your back toes, and your arms reach up. You can stay open and up right here, or you can open like this. Nice. Same thing for, let's say, Revolve Triangle. If you're new to that one, you'll step one foot back. Both legs are straight. Your hips are facing forward. And most of the time you'll lean halfway forward. Again, I recommend having those blocks to lift you up. Nice. And you can stay right here. You can keep your left hand down and reach open to the side. That's the one I recommend. If you're not too far along in your pregnancy, you can always take one hand down and reach the other up. Another one I like to do comes from Uttanasana Konasana, so from a wide leg forward fold. And that involves just placing one hand underneath the shoulder, opening up, and then going the other way. Nice. And those are generally safe twists that you can do. Let's see. Let's say you're lying on your back. This is another one that you'll come across quite often. So let's say you're lying on your back and the teacher has just instructed you to hug one knee in towards your chest and twist to the right or twist to the left. So if you're not laying on your back, you'll just come up like this and you're literally just windshield wipe your knees from side to side. And that could feel really, really good for your hips. You also get just a very slight twist. Now the modification for supine twists is if you are able to lay down on your back, which I'm kind of getting close to not being able to anymore, you'll cross one leg, one ankle over the opposite thigh, just like you were coming in to thread the needle. But instead, you'll move your other foot off to the side. You can see that. And then drop the knees to the side. So that foot is hooked on the outside. Let's say your right foot is hooked on the outside of the left thigh. And that's just kind of assisting the knee downward towards the floor. And the left knee is straight out from the left hip. A gentle twist that is nice and open. See it on the other side. Let's say your left ankle crosses over your right thigh. You'll move your right foot to the right, about a foot or two, and drop both knees to the left. And that's just one thing you can do when they instruct that pose. Okay. Let's see. As far as transitions go, the best thing you can do for different transitions is to find your foundation. So from the very beginning, your foundation is going to be most likely your hips or your feet. I would like for you to always keep your feet hips within distance while you're pregnant. There's no need to bring your feet together. You want to create a little bit more room for baby and also your pelvis to accommodate baby. So feet right underneath your hips, slight bend in your knees. Again, just make sure you're not locking into your joints. And spreading of your toes, lifting through the arches of your feet. And that's going to give you a nice form of stability no matter what pose you're in. Tadasana, Warrior Two, Temple Pose, all of those things. And let's say you're coming into a warrior stance. So you're coming into Warrior One or Warrior Two. Because your body is producing a lot of relaxin, which is a hormone that helps to lengthen your muscles to, again, accommodate baby and open your pelvis. A lot of times we find like, oh, I can dive really deep into Warrior Twos. Like your lunges get really long, or all of a sudden you can do the splits and you were never able to do those before. You want a certain amount of stability and strength to complement your flexibility and mobility. So I actually recommend to shorten your stance a little bit. So instead of widening into the deepest Warrior Two or side angle you've ever done, just bring your feet a little closer together so that when you bend, the knee stacks upon the ankle. It really shouldn't go any farther. And you pull up through the arches of your feet and you kind of hug the mat between your feet so that you feel the pelvic floor lift a little bit. And that's going to really help you to stabilize and strengthen your legs while you move and open your hips and your side body. Your body will really thank you for building that extra strength. And your legs pull together, lift up, and from there, move throughout your practice. So that's just a really nice and generous thing to do. It also helps to give you that little extra stability that you need as you transition, so you don't feel like, when you're not paying attention, you're kind of just like Humpty Dumpty, you're like, whoa, falling from side to side. Really stabilizing through your legs and accessing the muscles around your thighs. Okay, let's say that the class is now settling down into the final posture. So anything where you are seated or laying down. I recommend grabbing a blanket and sitting up on that blanket. Elevate your hips, support your sitting bones. Sending your feet forward. Feet are always hips within distance. You can grab your strap. Take it around your feet. Pull the toes back. Take a deep breath in. And then exhale. Leaning in. Janu Shirsasana. So you take the sole of your foot to your inner thigh. Just open it a little bit. Give yourself a little bit more room here. You could always go here. You could rest here. You could again take the strap around the extended foot. Take a deep breath in and then exhale. Pull yourself in that way. And then taking your time to release. Good. For Shavasana, you can always bring that blanket to support your head, and then your bolster in between your thighs. And lay down on your left side to rest. Or if you have props such as blocks and a bolster. And then you'll set up your blocks like so that they create a T. One block will be laying on its lowest side, and then the other block will be resting just a little bit higher above. You'll place the bolster down on those blocks. You'll bring your hips right up next to the bolster. I like to bring the soles of my feet together, but you can also keep your legs long. And then just lay all the way down to rest. The top block is supporting your head, and the bottom block is just helping to assist and open your shoulders. And this might be a really great just place for you to explore and open, especially if you're not so comfortable being flat on your back. You know, always just rest here. Do those windshield wipers here. If people are laying on their back and they're doing supta, and if they're doing leg stretches like this, you could always do this. Little things. This is such a great place to land. Knees knock in, heels turn out. Rolling over to your left side. And coming all the way up. All right. So thank you so much for joining me here today. I have been teaching yoga for over 10 years now, and I've had so many women who are expecting walk through my vinyasa classes. And so I'm so honored to share some of these tools and these modifications with you so that you feel empowered as you move about on your mat. Thank you so much. Wishing you the most blissful, peaceful pregnancy moving forward. Namaste.